Does a DWI go on my record? We get this question all the time. We're going to talk through the whole spiel that I give people because it sounds like a yes or no question, and of course I'm a lawyer, right? So I'm going to give you a big long answer, but that's the truth. This is everything you need to know. Does a DWI go on my record? First, we need to talk about what is a record. What do you mean when you say does it go on my record? There is not one place where everybody's criminal history information is, and we all go to the same database, everybody in the system. It's not like I get the printout like you see in the movies or the little folder with a little Polaroid picture of you in the top left and it's stamped secret or whatever. That doesn't exist. Criminal history records are kept all sorts of places. The police keep records. The clerk keeps records. The district clerk, the county clerk, the district attorney's office, all of these places keep records. Oftentimes, they all have a different number associated with the case. Um, but probably the most common place that criminal records are kept is what's called the TCIC NCIC system. It is a federally controlled database that prosecutors, police, and other individuals through private companies, and that's something we'll get to in a minute, all have access to the records kept in these databases. So if you're a police officer, you have what's called an MDT or a mobile data terminal. It's basically a laptop in your police cruiser. And you can type in somebody's name and date of birth, and it'll give you a printout of every state that has record information on that person with that name and date of birth. If you have a driver's license number, even better. If you have a social security number, even better. Or you'll get an FBI number if you do have an entry into this. So I'm a former prosecutor in Harris County. I was a felony chief prosecutor there, and we actually get what's called a SPIN number and an FBI number because we have access to this database. So even though I've never been arrested, I'm in that database as a potential user and things like that. So very interesting to know. But what's more interesting to know is what is on your criminal history record. It's actually illegal for you to look it up. So that's one of the first things they train you on when you become a prosecutor and you have access to these things is do not look up yourself. Do not look up your ex-wife or the president or things like that. Don't go doing that. You'll get arrested. You get a call from the FBI. So again, what is that record? Most of the time, we're talking about the TCIC, NCIC record and what goes on it. So when you get arrested for DWI, the first thing that happens is you're going to get sent to the jail. They're going to give you a TRN number or a transaction number that shows that arrest and what offenses the police thought you committed during that arrest. So if they thought you committed murder, you'd have an arrest. It would say event cycle number 1. If you'd never been arrested before, if you've been arrested 10 times, it'd be event cycle number 11. Then they'll say the name of the offense, uh, the agency that arrested you, the offense report number of that agency, and then it'll say held because there's no court data yet. So that's what happens on your record when you get arrested initially for a DWI. First, it'll say held. Then, if you go to court and you get convicted, it'll say what happened. If you go to court and gets dismissed, it'll say dismissed. What doesn't happen is that when you get a dismissal, let's say you hire a great lawyer, you hire us, we get the case dismissed for you. That doesn't clear your record. The record just shows that the case was dismissed, but it still shows you were arrested. So if you get pulled over by another police officer the following month and they smell alcohol in your breath and you have that prior DWI arrest, they're going to just assume that you were guilty of the first one and you got off on a technicality. This is how officers think. It's how prosecutors think. They're not going to assume you were not guilty because it says dismiss and then it's not going to be erased. You have to have an expunction to get it erased off of a TCIC NCIC record. Okay. So does a DWI go on my record? Yes, it goes on there quickly and forever unless it is expunged after a dismissal. Now, does that mean that if you apply for a new job, it's going to pop up? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that police can see it. It means prosecutors can see it. And there's different things depending on the outcome. So let's look at the different outcomes here on the next slide. So we're going to go in order of the worst outcome that could happen. down to the best outcome. Okay. So the first and the worst outcome that we're going to talk about is called a final conviction. For a misdemeanor DWI, that means some time in jail or payment of a fine only after credit for 3 days, because the minimum punishment for a DWI is 3 days in jail. So if it was a felony DWI, like a DWI third or something like that, it could be higher. Could be 2 to 10 years in prison on a third degree DWI third. If it's a fourth, fifth, or sixth, and you've been to prison before, the punishment range could even go up to 25 years to life. So, but a final conviction. This means that what's going to say on your criminal history printout is that you were convicted. The word convicted is going to be on there. It's not going to be a probation. It's not going to be a probated sentence. It's going to be a final conviction. If it was a prison sentence, a final conviction on like a third degree felony, 2 years in prison, that is a final conviction. If it's not shock probation, which is another option where they can send you to prison and then bring you back and put you on probation, it's a final conviction. That means there's no appeal, anything like that. Those can be used to enhance up to that 25 to life range. That's the worst thing that can happen. Now, a final conviction on a felony, that's going to stay there forever. It's never coming off your record. Never. It's never coming off. We get that question a lot. It is never coming off on a final conviction for a higher charge like a felony. DWI is one of the only offenses, however, on a DWI first offense, no prior convictions, you could have a 3-day in jail sentence, where maybe you get credit for the time you spent the first day you were arrested. Maybe you only spent about 5 or 6 hours in jail. They give you credit for 3 days. You pay a fine. That's a final conviction. But there was no wreck. The blood was under a 0.15. Nobody else got hurt in the DWI. You could be eligible for a non-disclosure after a period of 5 years. And a non-disclosure means that private companies and folks who just want to look up the criminal case online, they would see that it is sealed from public view. The police could still see it. Prosecutors could still see it. If you wanted to become a doctor, the medical board could still see it. A lawyer, the board of law examiners could still see it. There's a lot, anything that has a government license attached to it, real estate agent, all of those agencies are going to be able to see it still, even if it's non-disclosed. Okay. Same thing with a straight probation. Most cases, a straight probation is a conviction on your record. It's always there. It'll never be non-disclosed. But for a DWI, if it's the first offense, all those same factors I said a minute ago, under a 0.15 blood or breath, and nobody else was hurt in a wreck, even a straight probation can be non-disclosed if it's your first offense on a DWI. Same thing with deferred probation. Most offenses can be non-disclosed on a deferred. Same thing is true with the DWI. The timelines are a little faster. It's after a number of years, and it depends on what happened in your offense. But suffice to say, the better the outcome gets, the more likely you are to get it off your record in some way. Okay, and then this is the one that draws the distinction. If you have a deferred or worse, deferred probation, straight probation, final conviction, best you can do is a non-disclosure on a DWI. That means all the people you don't want to see it are still going to be able to see it, but general members of the public, maybe private companies that have no licensing authority, they're not going to be able to see it. So the key distinction here comes below this line here: the pretrial diversion, terms for dismissal, and dismissal. These are the three best options that can happen in DWI. All of them lead to a dismissal of the charge, not a dismissal due to deferred, but a true dismissal of the charge, which can be expunged from your record. And an expunction is better than a non-disclosure because it gets all the records erased from the police agencies that are keeping these records. That means private databases that are updated along with a federal database for TCIC, NCIC, they're all going to get wiped. That's what we want. Pretrial diversion is the worst of those options because it's like a probation. It could last for a year. You may have to have an interlock device in your car. That's the thing you blow into, test if you have alcohol in your system and on your breath, and see if you can drive the car. Otherwise, it's not going to start. You may have to do all that kind of stuff for a pretrial diversion, but at the end of it, it's a true dismissal. We can get it expunged. It's a great deal in some cases. Other times, terms for dismissal. This might be taking an online class, taking a victim impact panel where you hear stories of people who've been in a wreck who they've either had family members killed or they themselves have had a serious injury because of a DWI. You might have to do something like that, and then the case is dismissed. Also, that can be expunged. Or if we find that the officer has done something wrong, the probable cause isn't there, the reasonable suspicion is not there, and we get your case dismissed, that could also be expunged. And that's how you get something off your record. And so, we've done what 5 minutes now on this slide alone. You can see this is not an easy question. This is definitely something, if you have this question, you need to be talking to a lawyer. Don't just watch this video and assume you know what you need to do when you go into court. Get a lawyer, somebody that you trust. And I hope this has been beneficial to you for educational purposes. Obviously, these videos are all for educating the public on their rights, because when we know our rights, then we can protect them. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the next video.